What is up, team? Welcome back to the Red Storm Rapid Reaction Podcast. I'm Pat Kane, joined once again by my good friend Cole Latshaw. It's April 27th. The college basketball season has long since been done. The transfer portal has been a whirlwind. And if you're a St. John's fan, you can finally rest easy knowing you at least have a couple commits. It took a while for Rick Pitino to strike, for him to garner some commitments. Some St. John's fans were getting close to walking off the ledge, worrying about lack of NIL funds or Coach Pitino's ability to close on these transfers. Fortunately, he's quieted those folks, and not only has he landed 2 commitments, but it looks like we've got some serious prospects for some additional commits coming up soon. With our fingers crossed, not trying to jinx anything. Cole, how do you feel today on April 27th about St. John's off-season so far?
We're off the schneid. I think people love our transfer and recruiting videos. I think it's kind of like opening day or spring training in baseball. Like hope springs eternal, and a new season, a new roster. I think I'm going to, as people are accustomed to me, I'm going to be a little bit of a negative Nancy and rain on our parade a little bit just on what has happened so far in the offseason. But I think my opinion could easily change in the coming weeks and hopefully months as we finalize this roster. But I think ultimately any opinions that we have on players, whether positive or negative, it's like ultimately we just have to have complete trust in Rick Pitino to build a roster how he sees fit, and to know with players that might have a lot of untapped potential that we have the perfect coach to pull that out of them. So excited to see what Rick is building, and excited to see what Rick can pull out of the players that we have on our roster currently, and what the new players that are potentially coming in.
Absolutely. Negative Nancy, I'm not going to co-sign that. I think you're a realist, Cole. All right. And
thank you.
Maybe
realist.
I've been known as a positive Patty too much. All right. So we can balance each other out in that regard. Spring training opening day. I like that. I was looking at our first video last spring. We did the unveiling of like 9 new signings, and that wasn't until May 7th. So to put things in perspective, St. John's last year had to fill a lot more holes, and they still took a while to get going. And then after May 7th, so into middle of May, even June, we signed Dingle, we signed Zuby, we got Simeon Wiltshire, and we've got Chris Ledlum, which, was a special circumstance there. So still much further ahead of the game than we were last year at this point. And with some positive momentum going in the right direction, I think St. John's fans can feel a little at ease and can be thankful, like you said, for the coach who's at the helm, and doesn't seem as worried or nervous as many St. John's fans are on the surface. Let's take a look at some of the players who decided to stick with St. John's, who didn't enter the transfer portal. That's the other side of the coin. It's equally, if not more important, to retain your players and to also fill in spots from freshman recruits, hoping to build some continuity and some familiarity with Coach Pitino's system. You know how much he values the development part of college basketball. So St. John's was able to keep the following 5 players from last year's roster: guard Simeon Wiltshire, forward Brady Dunlap, forward RJ Lewis, forward Sadiq Ayo, and center/4. We'll see Zuby Ejiofor. Along with those 5 returners, we also have 3 freshman commits: left Harris Theotopoulos, didn't pronounce that right, never will, forward Jaden Glover, and center Common Maker. The 3 of those guys seemingly fit in well in terms of where they would gap out the roster. I'm not sure if we could expect serious contributions from any of them. Brady Dunlap and Simeon Wiltshire are good examples to point towards 10 to 15 minutes. Some games more, some games less, depending on the situation, depending on how much they develop. Maybe a guy like Jaden Glover is able to give a little more minutes than those guys were, but still, I think expecting more than what we saw to those 2 from any of these 3 would be foolish. Cole, your thoughts overall on the 5 returners and the 3 freshman newcomers?
Yeah, I think to your point, obviously, about freshmen, like we know what Rick's going to do there. He's going to try to bring them along slowly. I don't think right out of the gate we can expect major minutes out of any of the 3. Obviously, we'll get into adding Aaron Scott and Vince onto this list, but I think if you look at the roster as it currently is constructed, like what are we missing, right? Like probably another ball handler to help out Sim, probably shooting. And then I think there's a big question mark. We'll get into maybe some of the rumors of potential additions that could come via the portal. But additionally, we have two guys kind of in limbo currently in a suit with the NCAA, in Jordan Dingle and Chris Ledlum, of whether or not they can get another year of eligibility. I think to one of my critiques about sort of ball handling and shooting, like Jordan Dingle fills a lot of those holes if he can get an extra year of eligibility, especially that Jordan Dingle that we saw down the stretch run of Big East play in the Big East tournament. He seemed to get very, very, very comfortable in Rick's system. His jumper seemed to be connecting. I would love to see Jordan Dingle added, and Chris Ledlum added to that list of keepers. So fingers crossed on there.
Yeah, absolutely. I should have had a section there with an asterisk perhaps about those two guys. I think we as fans, we have the luxury of not being, foot to the fire, but the coaches got to treat that as just gravy,
Yep,
recruit
absolutely.
as if they're not getting that exception, not going to get that waiver. And then if they do end up getting that cleared, then you have just two added bonuses. You can't hope they get that and then hold those spots open. As unfortunate as that might be for someone's potential minutes, that's the reality of the situation. I second the notion about, the positives Dingle could have on this team coming back for another season. He was down the stretch, those final 7 games, playing close to an all Big East level, if not that. And if he was playing at that level the whole season, fans would be, just crossing their fingers, hoping he'd be coming back. I think he alleviates much of what you said in terms of an additional ball handler and a shooter. He already knows the system. He came along a far way towards the end of the season in terms of his rebounding and his toughness, I thought. And that kind of kept him in Pitino's, I don't want to say doghouse, but kept him away from, being one of his particular favorites early on, it seemed. But, hopefully that the lawsuit, NCAA doesn't want to fight it. I'm not sure how good of a chance it has. Obviously, it's already been denied once, and they're going at it a second time. I also wonder how many other Ivy League players there are from that class who are in the same situation that we're not talking about, who might jump on board or apparently or presumably already got denied as well. Out of these 5 guys, just the keepers up top there, Cole, is there one who stands out in terms of one you're most excited about keeping or their potential for next season?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, like to your point about roster continuity, like how important that is, especially with a coach like Rick Pitino, who is one of the best of all time in player development, player progression, as individual player workouts. I think obviously you hope for a huge jump from Simeon Wiltshire. RJ Lewis obviously is the answer to your question of who we're most excited for. He showed flashes of superstar potential. If he has a full healthy season, shin splints hopefully heal, a full off season of work with Rick. We all know how much Rick loves Zuby. And he's already, I know you're asking just about the keepers, but he's already raved about Lefteris coming over from Greece, Jane Glover, high recruit. Come on, Maker. Again, obviously we'll talk about Vince then a little bit later, but how many years as St. John's fans have we gone of not having like real true big men? I think back to like the Lavin years and Chris Obekpa, and then Chris Obekpa getting suspended for smoking the Chiba and having to play Sir Dom at center. I mean, now we have at least 2 7-foot plus guys on the roster. I mean, that's something to be excited for sure. But yeah, I think we have a real solid group between the returners, the incoming freshmen, and just to think about the jumps that guys like RJ, Brady, Zuby, Sim can make with a full year of work with this staff and Coach Pitino is really, really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. And I think maybe RJ Lewis, not only the most exciting, but perhaps the most surprising of the guys who are, on that borderline of who may or may not return. A lot of folks were kind of in that direction that Lewis would look to go somewhere else. But apparently, thankfully we were wrong on that end. He's got the potential to be an all Big East performer. He's got that type of talent. If he puts it, all together and he gets a little bit more under control and more familiar with the system, and hopefully can have a full off season of practice and, continue that through a healthy season. Looking at Simeon, Brady, and Zuby, I think there's no doubt that they could be, a very solid, 6 through 8 in a rotation next year. It's like the question is, can they make that jump to be like a 4 through 6 or even a 3 through 5? Or do they have that type of potential to be starters as opposed to bench role players? And I think the potential's there. You just never
Mhm.
know. Second year, do they make that jump, or do they just slowly and steadily
Right.
stay where they're at, or make smaller improvements?
Right.
I think you're going to have players out of all of them. Again, it's just the potential of where they might end up is going to be that difference maker between a good season, a great season, or a phenomenal season. Excited
Mhm.
for all of them. Truthfully, I'm not. I don't. I don't see a path for him to being a minutes guy. I'm trusting the fact that he also knows that, being as familiar as with Coach Pitino, and he's not just, if he wanted to leave, I think he would. But I'm not sure I see
Mhm.
minutes for him.
Mhm. Mhm. Agreed.
Let's change directions, talk about our newest additions. First up, Aaron Scott. Aaron Scott's a 6'7" senior transfer from North Texas, someone St. John saw earlier in that year in that close defensive battle against North Texas in the Charleston Classic. Last year, averaged 11 points, 5.6 rebounds, 1.8 assists. Defensively, 1.1 steals and 1.3 blocks per game. He shot 48% from the field, 37% from three, and 79% from the free throw line. He's got defensive versatility, can play in pretty much one through four has been quoted. I'm always
Mhm.
skeptical of
Mhm.
what that really means. I think he could really guard 2 through 3. I think on switches for the ones and fives, he's one of the forwards who could be more capable than others. Not someone you could say, hey, go guard this 5 or go guard this 1 for long stretches. He can really shoot it off the catch. Not much of a drive and kick guy or a drive and create guy, but can really catch and shoot or finish from like the dunker spot. And he gives us really good lineup balance. If we need shooters in different lineups, you can plug him in at the 3 or the 4. He can help you play big or small because he's such a defensive, versatile, just such a versatile defender. Per
Mhm.
100 possessions, North Texas is a team that really slows it down and grinds it out. So his overall production might not look like it stands out, although, I'm not laughing at 11 and 5.5 by no means. But his per 100 possessions was 22 points and 12
Mhm.
rebounds. For comparison's sake, last year, Ledlam was 18 and 13. Um, Finished in the Conference USA defensive win shares in 2023, finished first in 2023 when they were in Conference USA. And last year in the American Athletic Conference, he finished
Mhm.
second. Finished 19th in steals and 6th in blocks last year in the AAC. And in the AAC play last year, he shot 40% from 3 and 4 attempts a game. So a quality shooter, and not just a guy who's taking 1 or 2 shots from deep a game, but someone who can take 4 attempts and still hit at a high clip. I think he projects, depending on how we fill out the roster from here out, as a starter or a sixth man. He can play either forward spot. His defensive ability fits right into Coach Pitino's style, and his shooting ability will provide spacing and lineup options. Cole, your first thoughts on Aaron Scott?
Look at those advanced stats and breakdowns from Coach Pat. That's why everybody loves you, buddy. Uh, um, I really like Aaron. I think that was a good addition. Main competition was, it seemed like he was going to get pulled to Oklahoma, and then we swooped in there at the last second and stole him away. I think Memphis was also in there. Bringing back one of our favorite phrases from last offseason, positional versatility, baby. I think be excited for
Yes,
a
cannot
three and
forget.
D, a 3 and D small forward who will undoubtedly play like a good share of minutes at the 4, especially in smaller lineups, like you mentioned. Um, uh, Shot set, like you said, 79% from the free throw line last season, and 37 and 40% from the last from 3 the last 2 seasons. So he's got a shot. Seems to be more of a catch and shoot guy. I know they said from off the dribble, his effective field goal percentage was about 21%. So definitely more of a catch and shoot guy. So have to have him surrounded with solid point guard who can create. Um, I know it's not sort of an apples to apples comparison, but let me ask you a question. I know there's outside factors, NIL considerations. There's also like the positional versatility thing where Scott can probably play a little more minutes at the 4. But if it was just player for player, let me ask you, are you more excited for Aaron Scott this coming season, or would you have been more excited for a second year of Glenn Taylor Jr.?
I knew exactly where you're headed with that. And I think what you pointed at is like really the biggest thing to me. Like I definitely want Glenn
Mhm.
Taylor back. I don't think he's
Mhm.
a guy who numbers paint the whole story. And I'm not sure Aaron Scott will come over here and average double figure scoring. And if he doesn't, I don't think that
Mhm.
means he didn't play well.
Mhm.
There's multiple ways to make an impact. But I do think that for whatever the reason, Coach Pitino did not like the pairing of
Mhm.
Taylor and Lewis at the 3 and the 4.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
You
Mhm.
could say who was the 4, who was the 3. It didn't matter. He didn't have those two guys out there for long stretches or even small stretches throughout the whole season. And that was a pairing go back to look at our videos before the season, that was one of the lineups I was most excited about.
Yeah.
You know, having both those guys on the wing, getting up tempo and applying pressure, and it just didn't seem like something he was comfortable with. I do think Scott is much more 4 than 3. I think that's a topic of debate. I think he can guard both positions fine. I think offensively, you want to have a more offensively capable, you know, driver, creator at the 3 if you're going to play with him. And I think that's easier to find at the 3 than it is at the 4. So him at the 4 and kind of like an Aaron Wheeler role. He reminds me, speaking of Aaron's and speaking of, you know, stretch 4s, I think he's that type of player, maybe an inch or two shorter, but that type of player. I would say, knowing what we know about Glenn Taylor and how coach used him, I would say I'm more excited about Aaron Scott. Doesn't mean I wouldn't welcome Glenn Taylor back still. Like, I like that guy, and he's not a guy who needs shots to make an impact. Obviously, maybe that's part of the reason why he's in the transfer portal, because he wants more shots or for whatever reason. One or the other, I choose Aaron Scott. Maybe that's just me being a St. John's fan, living in the moment and be happy with the guy we're getting.
Yep.
I mean, you know, keep in mind, Glenn Taylor averaged 11 points in the Pac-12 as a sophomore. You know, it's not like he didn't show double-digit scoring capability. So it's not as easy to say that Aaron Scott's definitely the better scoring option, because we saw what Glenn Taylor was capable of doing before he came to St. John's. I just think more of a positional fit and balanced fit in terms of what we know we have. I think Aaron fits better.
Yeah, and I mean, like we said at the beginning, ultimately you trust Rick Pitino. We saw what Rick Pitino's opinion was of Glenn Taylor, and like you said, the fit with RJ. Ultimately, we trust Rick to bring in Aaron and fit that piece in where we need it and roll from there. So yeah, I think also ultimately he's a guy who probably, at least as the roster is currently constructed, will guard the opposing team's best player, assuming that best player is a wing or a 2 or a 4. Like, he'll probably have that primary defensive responsibility. And again, like you said, whether he's playing a stretch 4, whether he's playing a 3, I think his ability to catch and shoot, I think it's a good addition, and definitely excited to see what Aaron can bring.
For sure, 100%. All right, so Aaron's in the bag. Next addition we got 7'2", 7'1". We're gonna say 7'2". We're giving him the program height. 7'2", Vince Iwachukwu. Again, guys, sorry for the pronunciation, Phils. I'm not getting the spelling checks from the team beforehand. This is the best I got. I apologize to Vince. Junior transfer from USC. Last year, he averaged 5.5 points, 3.8 rebounds, 0.4 steals, 0.6 blocks, 50% field goal percentage, 70% free throw percentage. That's in about 15 minutes a game. He's got great size, obviously. He's got good potential. He comes with a high ranking from high school. And he allows us to match up with bigger guys defensively, assuming we don't add any more centers to the roster. And Zuby's asked to be a 5 primarily. This gives us a 7-foot-plus option defensively to match up against some of those bigger guys. Excuse me. In high school, he's ranked in the top 35 nationally by both ESPN and 24/7 Sports. 7 games in his career so far. You know, in 2 seasons, he's played over 20 minutes. Now, you might look at that already as like a warning sign. He's only played over 20 minutes 7 times, and sure, maybe that's a point. But in those games where he has got extended minutes, he has averages of 11 points, 6 rebounds, 1.4 blocks, 64% shooting, 77% shooting from the free throw line. And those aren't against scrubs. Those are games against UCLA, Colorado, Washington State twice, Arizona State, Oregon State, and Long Beach State. So I think that shows a little bit of a glimpse of what he's capable of if he gets comfortable, he gets extended minutes, and hopefully he gets healthier and healthier with a full off season, ready to work on his game this year. We'll touch on his health issues as well. His projection, I think he's a depth piece up front who has the potential to grow and be an impact player. Until then, his size and experience gives us a 7-foot-plus center with high major experience to help us match up with quality size that we know we'll see in the Big East. Cole, your opening thoughts on Vince?
I think you and I might have differing opinions here. Some folks are of opinions that recruiting service rankings really don't matter. Other people value them heavily. I think I kind of look at it from a perspective of I can watch as many college basketball scouting videos on YouTube, highlights of games, tapes as I can. But ultimately, some of these scouting services are paid to put together these rankings. Just looking at what 24/7 currently has as their transfer portal rankings, Vince is rated the 188th best available transfer at the moment. Just for reference, some of our players, we all like to pump our chests about last year's recruiting class being 6th ranked in the nation. Just for reference, some of the players from that team, Zuby was 108, Naheem was 145, Jordan Dingle 14, RJ 52, Danis Jenkins 67, Glenn Taylor 99, Chris Ledlam 64. So just seeing how that stacks up against Vince being rated the 188th best available player. He was, as you mentioned, his potential. He was ranked 25th by 24/7 coming out of high school. I thought it was very interesting. Rick's tweet after Vince had officially signed, he said during his player development session, he noticed that Vince's awesome attitude, tremendous work ethic, 7'1", 250, agile, mobile, and shoots the heck out of it. I found that shoots the heck out of it point very interesting. Last
You're
year,
buying it? You're buying it, Cole?
Well, I mean, he said the same thing about Zuby,
Right?
and Zuby showed a little bit of touch and some good free throw shooting down the end of the season. Vince shot 74% of his field goal attempts last year were at the rim. So he didn't really show off a lot of that shooting touch that Rick's mentioning, but he did shoot 69% from the free throw line the year before, obviously limited minutes in his freshman year, but 79% that year from the free throw line. So maybe that's sort of indicative of a nice touch. I love that he has really a nose on the offensive glass. He had average 1.5 last year, offensive rebounds per game, 1 in his freshman year, but that's obviously playing only like 15, 13 minutes a game. So awesome to see that he has such a nose on the offensive glass. You mentioned in some of the games where he played a little bit longer, some of his stats. I just wrote down some of his game logs. Washington State was a good, solid tournament team last year, 22 minutes, 11 points, 5 boards. At Arizona State, 25 minutes, 14 points, 12 boards. At Arizona, 19 minutes, 6 points, 7 rebounds, 1 block, 3 steals. At Colorado, that's the high water mark for minutes, 27 minutes, 10 points, 7 rebounds, 1 block. You mentioned the concerns as far as his health goes. I think at this point, obviously it's an incredibly scary situation. That cardiac episode that he had sounds like it was very traumatic with during a summer workout, with the coaches almost having to like revive him on the court. Yeah. You would hope at this point, obviously he's been cleared by USC medical. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously they've said St. John's did their due diligence with the medical staff. He played 31 games last year. Medical staff is going to let him back on the court if he still has heart issues. Probably the more concerning one to me is the lower back injury. He had a surgery on a herniated disc. As a fellow tall, lanky son of a gun with a creaky lower back, I will say that stuff tends to linger. So, and obviously he would have top of the line therapies and top of the line surgeons. But if you a young kid having a bad back issue like that and having to have surgery, like generally they'll probably try to steer you away from surgery if you can handle it. But that's concerning.
Thoughts. If you see his videos in high school, I mean, he looks like a much different level athlete than he does in his tapes in college.
I thought the same, but then like back to the "Are you buying it?" of Rick's quote, like him specifically calling out agility and mobility.
Well, I think they could be different. I mean, he could still be a quality athlete for being what he is now, but what he was looked like a guy who could really get up off the floor. I don't think I see that. Right. Maybe he's judging his agility compared to a guy like Joel, and he might be more agile than him. Sure. I don't think he's a really get up and down like jumper, at that size, like in terms of incredible athleticism. He looked like he could have had that in high school a little bit more. For me, it's not as much about what he could be. I think it's what you have in him. And like I was saying to you before about this, like, you've got a guy who's capable of playing 15 and 20 minutes of a backup center role in a high major conference. You can check that off, and that just makes it easier for you to build the rest of your roster, knowing you have that there. If he's what he was at USC, at St. John's, that's a capable backup center, and that's not the easiest thing in the world to find. We were lucky really to have a guy like Zuby last year capable of giving us those quality minutes when Joel didn't have it. We'll have the same thing next year, and hopefully Zuby can take that jump, and hopefully we're not done filling out the roster with potential bigs who can play some time at the 5. But I think Vince is a guy you can pencil in, fingers crossed on the health. If he's healthy, can be that 15 and 20 minute guy. If he's anything more than that, that's all gravy. So I think it's a quality addition. It lets you match up size wise. Plus, it's got the added potential of being more than that if things work out well.
100%. Yeah. And you just absolutely made the point. Like when I sort of temper my own expectations, it's more saying like, what are we expecting him to be here? Starting center? Like absolutely to your point. If we're expecting him to give us 15, maybe 20 minutes, if Zuby's in foul trouble, like just squarely in sort of a backup role, rotational piece, like there's tremendous upside. He obviously has great potential from his high school recruiting ranking. Like if
Yeah.
he's just brought in here to sort of play that backup role and provide us a potential spark off the bench, then I think there's high upside. And we already, to your point, we already know he's proven that he can do that in the Pac-12. So there's sort of low risk if that's
Curious
what's
here.
expected.
I've got a couple standing bets with the guys over at Red Fans. I don't think Zuby is going to start at the 4 next year. I don't think 4 is really his best position. I think he's a 5. I also don't think that Vince will be able to play any minutes at anything besides the 5. That's just my opinion. In the way that basketball is moving, you really don't see guys like Vince play the 4. You really rarely see guys like Zuby with limited offensive skills. Yes, he made a couple wide open threes. The form looked pretty good, but can he handle an attack and play as that versatile forward who's almost like more of a 3 than they are a 5? I don't think Zuby's there. Maybe in pinch spots, but I really think both of these guys are your 5s, and I'd be surprised if the next forward we get isn't more capable of playing 4 at a higher level than Zuby is, aka Norchad. You know what I mean? A guy who's got a little bit more offensive skills, is just the same size, capable of defending the post, but has more versatility offensively where you can play him on the perimeter a little bit easier. Do you think Vince and Zuby more specifically are more 5s, or do you think Zuby is more positioned to play 4?
Yeah, I think the key point is how does the rest of the roster flesh out? Like, is that even something that's needed? Hopefully, we have a stud 4 coming in, and then it's sort of more a Norchad and Aaron Scott playing the lion's share of the 4 minutes. To what you said earlier, you were most excited coming into last season about Glenn Taylor, RJ Luis 3-4 lineup. Like, I was excited about the possibility of a Joel Soriano at the 5 and Zuby at the 4.
Yeah.
I think from what we saw from Zuby last year, I didn't see him with the ability, especially as you said, in today's game where it's sort of more spreading the court, stretch 4s, running and gunning. Like you don't see a lot of teams with in essence 2 centers at the 4 and 5 going that twin tower, like Tim Duncan and David Robinson on the court together at the same time. That's sort of an old way of playing basketball that you don't see as much, clogging up the paint like that. All of that is said with the thought that Zuby isn't spending all summer long just working on his jump shot, like I'm sure is what he's doing. And then he shows, as you said, he had a nice touch on a few threes that we saw him shoot. He developed his free throw shooting was much better towards the second half of the season. If he develops a jump shot, then I think you could very well maybe see a little bit of him at the 4. But to your point, I do view both of them more as 5s and would agree with your bet with the Red Fan folks.
And let me just say that I'm more than happy going into this season with Zuby being at the starting center at 20 to 25 minutes. I'm ready to roll that dice. I think he's going to be fine there. That doesn't scare me. Some might be concerned with him being your starting center. I think he showed promise, and I think hopefully having the offensive pieces at the 1 through 4 will alleviate any offensive struggles you might have there. And I think he's going to get it done as a rebounder and a defender, whereas you don't even need a 10 to 15 point score from that 5 spot. But enough about what we do have. Let's go ahead and talk about potentially what's still left to come. Cole, I want to put you on the spot here. Can you run these names down for the fans here so I don't have to pronounce any of these names perhaps incorrectly one more time?
Yeah. Potential targets, rumor mill exploding. Kadari Richmond leaving Seton Hall, Davon Smith from Utah, Pop Isaac from Texas Tech, Kai Tandy, Wooga Poplar from Miami, Dylan Mitchell, Norchad Omier from Miami, Dylan Mitchell, explosive athlete from Texas, Cliff Omiori from Rutgers. Obviously, we've been involved like tons of rumors, innuendo. How much are we involved? One of these kids coming on campus. Pat, what do you think about sort of some of the rumors we've heard? Mike Rapoli has been out there playing with his horse and telling us that some guys are already in the fold here. Like,
yeah, he's talking a big game. I'm hoping he's talking that game because he's that confident. And like he said, he's paying him. Of course, he's gonna know who's coming.
yeah.
If it comes down to it, if he's willing to pay the starting price, is he not going to be willing to throw in the extra money when this bidding war occurs? So I'm hoping it's a lock. He mentioned 4 players. I'm assuming he meant the 2 we just talked about, and the 2
Mhm.
big names we heard most commonly mentioned the last 2 days, which is Kadari Richmond, who I've always been a big fan of. Obviously, people are going to be on each side of the aisle in terms of poaching someone else from a Big East rival. I think Valley Ackerman and the rest of the Big East would be happier that he stays in the Big East than goes and plays for Duke or a team outside of the conference. It might not mean to any, more of a friendship between the Seton Hall and St. John's staff, but hey, it's cutthroat. It's winner takes all out here, and you got to do what has to be done. And I think you're talking about a first team All Big East player who, on the surface, might not fit Coach Pitino's system to a T, but he was also a guy who last year brought a less talented Seton Hall team above St. John's in the standings into an NIT championship. So maybe the system's got to be tailored a little bit for the talent, and also perhaps a guy like Kadari who's played at systems Syracuse and Seton Hall, who are notorious for slowing down the game and not playing at a breakneck speed. Perhaps he's more inclined to play that than we've seen, and it's not just his preference, but just the systems he's been in. He's an athlete. He can pass. He's creative. I wouldn't be surprised if he's better in transition than what we've seen.
Mhm.
He's number one. Seems to be. I mean, the Seton Hall reference seems to make that obvious. And then the other one is Norchad O'Meara, Miami's big man, 17 and 10, average a double-double for all 4 years between Miami and Arkansas State. We were close. I think we were in his top 2 when he first transferred. Coach Anderson was after him before he went to Miami. But a skilled big guy, physical monster, but also light on his feet, capable defender, and just would be a dream fit, I think. A guy who's capable of playing at the center spot. In fact, I think he's too good at the center spot not to play him there at all, but also a guy who's got this perimeter skills to play a little bit of stretch forward, to play next to another big. And hopefully, him wanting to show that skill is something we could offer as a potential landing spot. If you believe the rumors, it seems like it's, we're the prohibitive favorite and it's us or the NBA. So, I don't want to wish against the guy's NBA chances, but hopefully he's wearing St. John's red next fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Norchad with a supposedly a no contact designation being in the portal. So it sounds like he knows where he wants to go, if that's indeed true. So that's very interesting. And as you mentioned, like Kadari, Mike Rapoli specifically mentioning us poaching somebody from Seton Hall. And I loved him sort of poking the bear, saying, oh, wow, I kind of feel bad about stealing a player from them. And then he's just like, I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah. I guess Seton Hall's got like a billionaire alum too that doesn't give him any money. Hopefully he doesn't, I don't want to start a bidding war with another billionaire guy. He might be, hey, it's your money, Repo. And if you're going to pay it, then go ahead and talk it.
Some billionaire alum from Seton Hall that's just a complete dweeb and doesn't have any any interest in basketball whatsoever. So poor
here we guy who like literally wants to like get on the horse to race. He's that competitive.
Yeah. Poor Shaheen Holloway is just dying for any NIL money he could possibly get his hands on. Some billionaire alums just leaving him high and dry.
So let's just say, and I don't want to, count our chickens here, but if we get those 2 guys, it's an obvious home run grand slam, and you can really kind of see how the roster would finish. At that point, you would still only have Kadari and Simeon as real guards past their freshman years. You'd be asking any forward to play down a little bit or lefty to play minutes as a freshman. You would still need to target another guard. Any of these guards listed, I'm not sure how willing they'd be to come in and be the third guard. Who knows? Yeah, I think Isaacs, Tandy, and Poplar are more off guard guys. Still, though, you'd be asking them to play the third, maybe, or you'd be asking Wiltshire to play the third. That's a tough sell. I think Smith is the gem of all these guys, really the most talented guy you might see on this list. He's just a supreme athlete, can really pass the basketball, showed last year he can be a quality shooter too. I'm not sure that him and Richmond can coexist. If they both want to come here, then yeah, absolutely. I think that's a chemistry experiment I'd be willing to see play out. And then the other forward, Mitchell, who I'm not sure if there's been any legitimate linkage or not to St. John's, other than just some tweets by Zach and some talk on Trilly's Discord. But he is an unbelievable athlete. Like, does some things athletically I don't know if I've ever seen before, and that's no exaggeration. A lefty too, so that pokes at my heart. And I don't know if there'd be space for him if Omir came. As a matter of fact, I don't think there would be, but a backup plan perhaps for Norchad if he's legitimately interested. There was rumors last week he'd be visiting this upcoming week, so we'll see. But really, if you get those two guys we mentioned, Kaderi and Norchad, the fifth guy could be you or me, and I still think you call this a home run pull. Thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the point you just finished on there, like if you are able to land Norchad, Ormir, and Kadari Richmond, I think you're, as the roster would currently be constructed, probably in the running for a preseason top 25 ranking, which is crazy to think of. I'm not sure. Cliff Amayori, I think we'd be remiss without talking about him. Obviously, we were talked heavily in the beginning, rumored to be his landing spot. I'm not sure how much that is still really on the table. I think he's currently at Bama, so hopefully he's not committed there yet. It sounds like from the rumor mill, we still have some type of puncher's chance. I'm not sure how that really works out with already having 3 centers on the roster. We should also mention Pop Isaac is down to his final 3 with us, BYU, and Creighton. To your point, I'm not really sure how a Davon Smith or a Pop Isaac really fits with Kadari Richmond because they seem to be a little more ball dominant. Me personally, I love what I've seen of Wooga Poplar. I'm not going to admit to being like a regular watcher of the U basketball, but from the highlights I've seen, I think, like you had said, he seems to be more of like a off-ball player. Might be all name team, but the ability to sort of play off-ball if you were able to have Kadari and Simeon Wilcher as 2 more ball dominant guards to bring in an off-ball guy. But I love how you phrased if we were maybe unable to get Norchad Omier, that Dillian Mitchell would be a backup plan, who is currently the 13th best player per 24/7's recruiting rankings. To your point, like just unbelievable.
An incredible backup plan.
Yeah, an incredible backup plan to say the least. Yeah. So again, I'm not sure. This is all rumor mill, innuendo. I'm not sure how involved we are there. Allegedly, he might be coming next week.
Isaacs to me seems like the one that came out of nowhere. All somewhere the top 3. I wonder if there's legitimate interest. I wonder if he visited and we didn't know about it. Last year, his efficiency numbers weren't too great. Didn't shoot all that well. He did score 16 points a game as a sophomore in the Big 12. As a freshman, he shot 38% from 3 on 7 attempts. So he has shown the capability of being a quality shooter. He comes from a solid defensive program. I think he's obviously not in the same level as Smith and Richmond, and a little bit less of a point guard, more of an off guard. I think he's maybe the 3rd choice out of those 2 guys in case we strike out there. But you'd still have to find another guy who could play on the backcourt with him and Wilcher. So I'm sure there's some names we don't know about or are still floating around. But hopefully we can wrap up the 2 favorites within a reasonable time, so it can allow us to kind of relax and pick up that last spot.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know you had mentioned sort of again Wooga, like his ability to play off ball, like him shooting 38% from 3 the last 2 years. I think that, as we mentioned when looking at the full roster as currently constructed, we desperately are going to need some shooting. Especially then too, if we had Kadari and Norchad, we really need to flesh out the roster with an additional shooter. So Pop's ability to shoot from 3, Wooga's ability to shoot from 3. I think those are 2 things to like really look at for that additional last piece then that we'd be looking to add.
And Cliff, hey, if you still want to come on board, we'll find room for you.
Of course.
Cole, I appreciate you stepping on. Obviously, me and you, we live and breathe with this stuff, and appreciate all the fans for the comments, the follow along on Twitter, on YouTube, sharing their thoughts, the subscribers, the people who follow along. We all appreciate it. St. John's fans have it lucky, man. We got a lot of people putting out content, and I think we appreciate it from all different angles. We appreciate the fan interaction. So thank you, Cole. Thank you all. For Tyler Smith, this has been St. John's Red Storm Rapid Reaction Podcast. Pat Kane, that's Cole Outshaw. Till next time, peace.